Okay, welcome back to my build of the Syren. I'm on chapter 9 now. I've completed the copper plating of the hull on chapter 8. Looks pretty good. Still needs, at some point in time, a coat to cover it up to protect it. But I think I want to let it sit for a bit and get some patina to it before I coat it. That way I can lock the patina in how I like it. First part of chapter 9 is we're supposed to be putting on the detail on the transom, as well as the lettering. And eventually these would amount to fake cabins on the side. In preparation for that, I've already taken the parts and painted them up. All I did, I used some Tamiya paint I had here for the first coat, just to get something on there. Tamiya usually sticks pretty good, but no promises. And I coated it with MIG's new wood. Gives it so it gets closer to looking like a wood. Added some black for the windows, the fake windows. Added some Vallejo wash to make it look more kind of like wood and to highlight the details. Kind of worked. And then I just coated it with a clear oil-based polyurethane to give it some protection so I don't wear the paint off. Acrylic paints, unless they've sat for a couple months, will come off fairly easy. So the first step is, once I have these things out here, is need to get these things glued on. And then I have the letters here for the transom all cut out and ready to go. These will be glued on with super glue. I think these will be glued on with an epoxy. We'll see if my epoxy is still good after 4 years. So the first step is to figure out where to glue these things on. Now, I was very careful to note that the sides of the center section go up and the wreath kind of points down. And it'll be centered back here on the transom. So I will get my camera readjusted so you can see this, and we can get that glued on. Okay, first piece will be the center piece right here. Needs to be centered on the stern, as best as you can get it. And it looks like they got it kind of low here, where it's almost touching this edge. And the tops here on either side are not touching. So I'll try to see if I can get that to go in something like that. About right there. Make sure it sits flat. This is just soft metal, so it bends really easy. So with that like that, go ahead and get some super glue onto the back of it here. Could have been convenient with the camera in the way, but oh well. And then, hopefully I can get it on the right spot first time. Looks good. And the next two pieces go on the same way on either side of that. Something like that. So I'm going to let this set and start getting these letters in. I think the best way to do the lettering is make sure the rudder is straight and start from the center and work the way out. Center letter is the R. And they give you 3 sets of the lettering, so if you lose one, it's not the end of the world. Lose 2, not the end of the world. Lose 3, you're screwed. So right there. Can't see it, but I have the R right there. Need to make a spot for it to go right in the center here. And if I can do this without losing it, just set it in the center and let it cure right there. So I'll go ahead and get all those in and come back. So there we have the Syren in place and the carved wood molding up here. Well, metal, but it's supposed to be wood. So next is to go ahead and get the side pieces on. These pieces here. And then there's some fake sheaves and some rings to put up here. While we're on the subject of these side pieces, the fake cabins, I think Mod X needs to work on their quality control a little bit. This one is physically wider than this one, and this one is physically taller in the Z-axis here than this one. Not going to be able to fix that. I'm just going to live with it. You're only looking at one side of the ship anyway, but I think they could have done better with that. But now I just need to work towards getting the other rings and sheaves on and figure out how I'm doing that. And I'll be back. Okay, as part of doing the detailing on the outside of the hull, we need to make some rings to go on the eye bolts for the outside of the ship. The rings you need to make yourself, and you need to make them out of the 28 gauge wire. A couple of ways you can do this. This is the way I do it. So rings are like this. You need 8 of them for the outside of the hull at this point in time. These are just made out of the black 28 gauge wire. This comes in the kit, just like this. These did on mine. And to do this, I'm using a set of jewelry making pliers. The jaws of them are both cone shaped, tapered, but all around. And what I do is I just take one wire, just go down the ends, don't want the ring too big, wrap the wire completely around, so I can get a nice ring out of it, and I snip it off. Okay, so I need 8 of these, so that gives me 5 there, 6, 7, and 8. I can get in there and cut it off. And then you can take your brass eye bolts. These are brass, although I have put them in some brass black to turn them color, because everything should be black on this ship, so there shouldn't be any bright brass. You should be able to, if you have enough of a gap, slip the two together. If you can't slip them together, then you need to open up your ring. But like I said, you don't want to expand the ring out. You just want to go sideways with it, open up a gap, slip it on the eye bolt, lose it a couple of times. That is a requirement. And squeeze it shut. And with that, should give you a nice little eye bolt to use. The blacking is going to start trying to come off the eye bolt. Don't worry about that. It's the brass black. All it does is oxidize the outside, and that oxidization can wear off, but it shouldn't, unless you really scratch it, go to a shiny brass again. There, one made, one down, 7 more to go for the side of the ship. So here we are, transom's done. Time to work on the port and starboard side detail. Basically what needs to happen is I got 2 sheaves to put here with 2 rings, which I already think I've started to show you how to make the rings. Another sheave and ring up here somewhere, and another one up here somewhere. And then there's the chest tree and the fenders and the steps. That ladder comes to the side. First things first is I need to put these rings and sheaves back here. According to the plan, the sheaves are basically right underneath the shear plank at the stern here, and kind of angled from low on the stern to up on the bow. Instructions say to drill through one side, then drill through the other, and that the holes do not need to match. I've been drilling all the way through because back here it's 2 planks of wood and they're pretty close together, so you almost can't help it. If I come about right there, see where I'm at. If I do one right there, looks about right, so I'll come right here and do one. Which of course is going to go through this frame right here, but whatever. There's actually not anything behind there, that'd be the fake frame. Little pin vise, I forget what size of drill I'm using. It's just one that seems about the right size to me. The instructions don't actually tell you what size to use. Go on through. I kind of use this as a sander, just run it back and forth a couple times through the hole. This one's here, we'll go do the other one about right there. And drill it through. Now the second one is just above it, and it's pretty much parallel to it. So it'll go about probably right there, just above the bottom of the top plank. And the other end will be about right there, I think. Looks good. I'm just eyeballing these, obviously. It's not to be exact, as long as they look good to you. So if the hole's drilled, then you simulate the sheave in there. And the sheave is just the pulley that'd be inside. So if you just come through and follow the instructions, you just kind of notch the sucker out. This is to press it in with like an awl or something, but it's a very sharp knife, just notch it out. And come back with a pencil, and that looks like a pretty good sheave to me. Holes to run the rigging through, and an actual sheave wheel. Next thing is to get the rings on here. There are 2 at this point. Smaller hole that'll be about the right size for the pin to go in, and these you definitely do not want to go all the way through. Looks like one's about right there. And the other one is actually up in the shear plank, kind of on a line, it looks like. So I'll put it right here. Call that good. Using with the first layer, call that right there. 2 of my rings here. If I can find my tweezers. Okay, I already have 2 of these made up. Eye bolts with a split ring on them. Back here. Now obviously they're too long, so I'll have to shorten them down to fit. So I just cut off a little bit of them. You know, so I still have a pin sticking out. There's my tweezers. Super glue them in. I use a thick one. Well, use gap filling medium, Bob Smith Industries, or something similar. fun part, trying to get the split ring to stick up above so you don't get the glue on it, but get the actual stem of the eye bolt stick down. You can get glue on it. And there, I just got glue on the eye bolt as well. Stick it in the hole, which have glue on it. And from looking at the instructions and pictures, the eye bolt is horizontal. Just like that. Grab the second one, do the same thing. Right there. And that's those. There's 2 more sheaves and 2 more ring bolts. I'll do those off camera. In the meantime, the next thing we'd have to do is start working on these ports, the sweep ports. Pardon my reach. And they are literally just a piece of wood cut to length, fit in there, glued in, and then one of these little pieces here glued on top. This entire port. The doors are closed with the entire port. But since I am not the best, by no means a model master modeler, I am just a little off in my square height, all that kind of stuff. Okay. This one looks pretty good. Just get rid of my little mark there. And then I can glue this one in. Glue on the back side. Stick it in the opening. Gets glued down. Then, we're stuck with tweezers again. Grab one of these hinges, and the hinges are done so that the opening faces the bow. That'd be the pin side of the hinge, so that makes sense because as you're going forward in the water, wave hits it, it will have a tendency to close the sweep port rather than open it. A bit of glue on the back, glue it on so it kind of hits the front of it, just like that. I'll do the rest of those off camera. The third thing is start coming up and doing the chest tree and the steps. Chest tree, rope fenders, and steps. According to the drawings, 1, 2, 3, 4. The fenders, 1, 2, 3, 4 are right here, right? 2, 3, 4th port, yeah, right here. About there and there. In the chest tree, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, be right here. Those are actually laser cut parts, and they do need to be adjusted to fit. So on sheet F of your laser cut parts, you'll have these pieces here. Those are your combination chest tree and fenders, and they give you 2 extra. So if you screw them up, no great loss. Or you can just make them yourself out of the right size of wood. I'll grab one of these. Actually, I'll grab all 3 of these. And this wood's really soft. You'll gouge it or whatever if you just look at it wrong. Excuse me. Trim, flush off where you trimmed it. Stab yourself once. Gotta do that. You got at least once glue your project to your hand, and at least once poke yourself with a knife. Now these things are going to be too long, so 1, 2, 3, 4, just after the 5th one. These will be too long. They need to go from the top of this whale to right underneath the cap rail. So they're going to be too long. That's a given. If you turn it upside down, then you can mark your length. So this one comes right in here. Go ahead and cut it off to that length. So if I fit it back in here, it should be just about a perfect fit right into there. Now if you remember, your shear strake is proud of the actual rest of the planking, so you need to trim it, the fender, so it fits around that. I'm just eyeballing it. So the thing should go right there and fit right in. So once that's all done, fits right in. A little bit of sanding to get rid of the char from the laser, and you'll have both of these cut length and fit in. And go. And it fits right in. And when you're done, they'll look like that. Paint the tops of them. The rest of them get the same kind of stain you put on the rest of the side, and call it good. Like that. I'll go ahead and get the chest tree later. And when I get the chest tree in, I'll come back and we'll do the steps that go up the side, the ladder. About right now. Okay, next step on our quest for building the ship is to build the gun ports. There are basically 3 types of ports on the ship. One that goes on the bow port, which is not a gun port. I forget what it's called, but it's not a gun port. It's a single piece door. A set of doors on the sternmost port. That is a 2-piece door, and then all the gun ports that are 2-piece doors with a hole in them. Got some instructions here, but just real quickly, you're gluing 2 pieces of wood together edge to edge, shaping them, putting the hinges on them and pins on them, or rings on them, and then gluing them onto the ship. Started doing that, so I have 3 types here. I have the sternmost set of doors on the side, 2-piece, gun port, circular hole in it, rabbet around the edge, and then the port for the door for the bow port. They need to be painted red on the inside. They get rings on the inside. The gun ports get them on the bottom, but not the top, I believe. The bow port gets rings on the bottom. This port gets rings on the top and bottom section of the door. Okay, I have all my gun ports made. Read the instructions. Saves about half the time of doing these gun ports, because it turns out you only need the gun ports doors on the bottom half of the gun ports themselves, because the top half would have been removed and stood below when the ports are open. Well, so only the bottom half was hinged. So I got them all made up. Should be 16 of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 17. And to do them, what I did, I took 2 pieces of wood, glued them together, cut that piece, whole strip in half, the same wood used for the planking, cut that piece in half, and then put on a piece of tape so that I have 2 sections glued together next to each other. So 2 planks, then the rest of them not glued together on a piece of wood or a piece of tape. Cut them to length, and then for the door that's supposed to be for the bow section, once cut the length and fit, open up, stick glue in it, and close it back up and let the glue dry that way. That way you have one door that's double height for the bow, and you have all the rest that are single height. Cut the rabbet in. That was a lot of fun. Took a knife and scored it down this way, and then cut in the edge very carefully. Surprisingly, I did not cut my fingers doing that. So I guess this rabbet around the edge, I don't know if you can see that. and then you get the notch in it. I opened them up so that I have two of them back to back, and then used a round file to file in the opening, a round opening. And then when you close it, you can see if you have a nice round opening and if the carronade fits through it just fine. Getting pretty even that way and pretty round. And I'm pleased with how that turned out. Next step is to go ahead and put the eye bolts on them. The eye bolts, just go in and they sort of get bent down so they aim towards the bottom. It looks like the hole for the eye bolt is done about where the seam of the two pieces of wood meet. So I go ahead and drill it there. Not all the way through. You don't want to see it on the outside. Although with these ports, it doesn't matter. You're not going to see the outside of them with them open. So I take a nice small bit. I come in. Get the start of a hole. Both sides of each one. These ones here happen to be for the sternmost gun port that's closed. And you can grab your eye bolt. You want to bend the eye of itself at 90 degrees. Lose it a couple times is always required, of course. Then you're going to cut it off and glue it in. That way you can bend them over so it looks like it's hanging down. Glue them in. You know, obviously you don't want to fall out. But once you're done, then you have your little eyes for everything to hook into for the crew to reach out and grab the door and close it and lash it shut using those eye bolts. I'll get all those done and come back. Okay, got all my gun ports made here. All the eye bolts glued in. Nothing on the outside yet. There's going to be nothing on the outside of these, but the upper ones for the stern, the two sets of gun ports that are on the very transom have an eye bolt in. I haven't put that in yet because there's no need to at this point in time. That can be put in just before I put it on. Now I need to put the hinge straps on them. Everyone gets two hinge straps. A little piece of metal. Let's take it with a pair of pliers. Grab the narrow part of it where it necks down. Right at that joint and give it a 90 degree. Do that to each one of those. Excuse me. Get a pair of them there. Do that to each one, and you can glue them in place. If you bend them first, make sure it's easy to glue because you can just grab it by the narrow tang. Get a little bit of glue on it, or a lot as the case may be, and just glue it on. Make sure your tang goes, the 90 degree part sticks up, goes towards the flat side, which will be the bottom of the gun port, because that's where the hinge is going to be. Set it in place, let it glue on, let it set. I'm just using super glue with this, and repeat for the other one. Get in about the same distance in from either side, it doesn't have to be perfect. Since it's super glue, it will dry on this wood pretty fast. And then with that, you can go ahead and put each of the gun ports in place. To do that, I'll get you out here a bit and grab the ship. What I've been doing is just working from one end to the other. I grab my gun port and I set it in place, get it centered up, and I mark where those pins are going to be, where the hinge pins are going to be. Because what you're going to do is you're going to drill a small hole there for the pin to go into. You're going to take your actual pins and cut them off to about half the length. You don't have to have them that long. Get some glue on them. And then you just glue them into the holes. One thing you may want to try is, instead of gluing the hinges onto the doors first, glue them into the holes first with them bent over and glue the doors onto the hinges. And that might be easier. Your call on that. Once you get them in place, you're supposed to put a short piece of wire on top of them to represent the actual pin of the hinge. I've been looking at that. That is a whole bunch of those, and I don't think it's going to really add to anything. Feel free to do it if you want, if you desire. I don't think it's going to add to anything. So anyway, once you get all those in place, you're going to end up with a whole side of hinge doors sticking down. Like I said before, there's none that goes up. Those would have been not hinged, and if you're opening the porch, you'd have taken those halves of the doors and stood them below decks. So anyway, get all the rest of these in, and the ones on the stern, I'll get those done and come back, and then we can get the chain rails in place. Okay, there are all the gun ports are in place, including the ones at the stern. Next thing to do before putting my chain rails on is I need to come through and put the scuppers in place. And all these are is little holes drilled in partway through, and then just darkened with lead. Does not need to go all the way through. Would not recommend you drill it all the way through, since what's going to happen if you drill it all the way through is you're going to end up with the holes in the wrong spots on the other side. There's 5 of them below the middle sweep ports, and on the top board, the board just above the whales. So like I said, you're just going to drill your hole right in the center underneath the sweep port. You don't need to go all the way through. That one did, but first it goes into the bottom part of the hole where you never see it. You just drill a hole in. 5 of them, or 3, 4, 5. And we'll do the same thing on the inside, right into the waterway. Again, you don't need to go very deep. You don't need to go all the way through. 3, 4, inside, and then take your pencil, poke in there, and give it a twist. The scuppers would have been lead lined according to the instructions, so a little bit of pencil lead, not lead lined. Same thing on the outside. And scuppers are done. So like I said before, the last thing is to put the chain rails on. There's 2 chain rails on either side. I can find where I stuck them. They are laser cut for you, so you don't have to make them. There's one for the fore and one for the aft. The aft one, according to the instructions, the single notch goes forward, and they're going to go basically right there, so the front is pretty much with that ladder. Opening here, where there's no lines, goes above a gun port. Same thing here. A little bit of cleanup on the chart edge so you can see what you're doing. Oops, wrong side. They'll be glued and pinned into place, and then painted black. I'll probably paint them black first. Pin them, paint them black, and then glue them into place. So I had the chain rails painted, sanded and painted. Got some pins in the bottom with them. Just put that in with a little tiny drill bit into the edge of it. Last step is to actually glue them to the hull. I have one set glued on already. The other set goes on the other side, and they should pretty much line up with that one. So if you look at it, there's a notch, 3 notches, 3 notches, 2 notches. The single notch, verify that single notch goes in front of this port, so that this rail pretty much ends up almost lining up with the ladder here. And then this gap between these 2 notches goes over this gun port. Since I have the pins in there, I need to drill some holes in the shear plank here. All I've been doing with that is line them up, mark out where looks like they're going to end up. The pins are going to be where the pins will end up. Come back with a little drill and drill a hole right here. Not all the way through. Then I can take and trim these pins off down quite a ways. Don't need to be as long as they are. Make sure everything fits, looks like it's right. There, one there, one there. Don't worry about paint this outside edge, there's going to be another piece that goes on the outside of that anyway. Look from the top, see if they're in the same spots. All the holes line up, or the slots line up. Then you can take it back off, throw some paint on it, or glue on it, stick it back on. Just gluing them on with super glue. Like one of the pins either got shoved in or came out. That's fine, there's 2 more. One, 2, 3. Hold it in place. Set down the sides, look off the top, everything looks good. And get the last one in. This looks good. So with that, that means chapter 9 is done. So that gives us gun ports, everything on the sides, chain rails, stern gun ports. Next step is chapter 10, where we do everything on the bow. Get all the head rails and everything in place, and that's going to be a while to do, just because there's so much that goes on up here on the bow. So with that, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.